There he is. Yo, man, what's going on?
What's going on, man?
Hey, good to see you.
오랜만이야. 진짜 오랜만이야.
뭐 하고 있었어?
기다리고 있었지.
Let's sit down on the stairs here and talk for a bit.
All right.
So I know you speak Korean really well. In fact, I've interviewed you a few times in Korean.
시간 있을 때 뭐 하는 걸 좋아하세요?
뭐 아까 얘기했듯이 친구랑 만나서 간단하게 소박하게 소주 한 잔 한다든지.
But just one last time, can you introduce yourself in Korean?
안녕하세요. 저는 이제 미국에서 온 션이라고 합니다. 제가 이제 한국에서 산 지가 한 5년 정도 된 것 같고요. 근데 한국말 배운 지가 그보다 조금 더 오래된 것 같습니다. 한 8년 정도?
Sean is part of the Filipino fencing national team. Later in the video, we'll talk about why he came to Korea. Are you Korean?
I'm not Korean. I'm American. More specifically, Filipino American.
So your Korean's incredible. What's one thing you wish you knew when you were just starting to learn Korean?
To just accept things that you don't understand, even if you don't understand them right away. In order for us humans to understand something that we don't know, we have to learn it systematically. And so sometimes we get stuck in the systematic way of trying to learn things step by step. And if this one thing doesn't match something that I learned in the classroom, we get kind of confused and frustrated over that one thing and we kind of, obsess over it. But from the perspective of learning a language over 8 years, the thing that helped me most was just to accept it. If they speak that way and they use this certain word or the certain grammar, just follow along, do it yourself, and then you'll get the hang of it, you'll get like the feel of it in like not even a week or two. And if it's wrong, then someone will correct you.
That's such a great point, Sean, because when learning a language, especially when you're like in that beginner or intermediate phase and you're just starting to talk to native speakers, they're gonna say words that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be really good at like piecing together what they're trying to say, what they're saying. Kind of like looking at a puzzle that doesn't have all the puzzle pieces in there yet, right?
Yeah.
So you're zooming out and you're like, I think I know what they're saying, right? I know the topic, I know 70% of the words, so I can just kind of guess what they're trying to say. A lot of people get really intimidated or they lose confidence because they don't understand 100%. But becoming very fluent means accepting that you're not going to understand everything all the time. And I think that's why like learning languages is so good for your brain, because your ability to guess and put the puzzle pieces together and sometimes be wrong, but that's okay because you're still going to learn. But really try to see the bigger picture of what they're saying. You get better and better and better at it.
100% agreed.
And we're going to be sharing a lot of tips in this video of like language learning and the right mindset and good habits and practices. For all you watching right now, you don't have to follow everything all at once. That's a bit too overwhelming. If you can take some tips here and there that work for you, that's definitely a success, right? So just take whatever works for you, and I'm sure even just using some of the tips in this video are going to improve your English. So how do you keep going with your Korean study even when progress feels slow? You've hit like a slump, you're like, I'm just not improving. It feels really slow.
When I was in Seogang University and I was listening to my lectures that are in Korean and about Korean language and literature, I had a hard time, trying to understand the professor as well, but I sat up in the front of class, I always kept a recording, and then I would put that recording into a speech-to-text AI program. And so I would go over and I'd look at every word that she was saying and then what I understood and what she was actually saying. And going back and forth and comparing those, that's one of the ways to get out of that slump, especially if you're struggling with listening or speaking in general.
So someone like watching this to take that advice could like look at subtitles, right? On a movie or on a YouTube video and study scripts like this. They could look on YouTube. In fact, all YouTube videos have the show transcript button. You can copy that, put it into ChatGPT or just copy it into a Microsoft Word file and look word for word at what is being said so that you have the visual, you get that double input and you can exactly find the words you don't know. That could be something very actionable that someone could do, right?
Yes, definitely. And that's what I'm kind of, jealous about of, the new AI generation.
We didn't have that.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
And there's so many tools to learn a language 10 times faster than there were 8 years ago.
Now is the best time to learn a language. If you're learning English, I'm so jealous of you. Definitely utilize this kind of stuff. Yeah. All right, you want to take a walk?
Let's go.
Cicadas in Korea are really loud, right, Sean?
They're freaking noisy, man.
Do we have cicadas in the US?
Yeah, we do. We have cicadas in the US. They are nature's alarm.
Nice. So Sean, what do you do when you're just too tired to study, but you just want to stay consistent with your improvement?
I just have a conversation, honestly. I think conversation is the most natural and most fun way to, practice and learn a language.
I love that. That's such a good point because there is some use for system and like learning new grammar and stuff. There is use for that. But sometimes you just need to do something that's just fun. Having a conversation is such a fun thing to do, but it also helps you to improve. So an example might be like if you're a dancer and you're just constantly learning new dance moves and you're learning routines, yeah, that's useful and that's going to help you to be a better dancer. But sometimes you just got to go to the club and dance, right? And enjoy it and use the tool that you're learning for something fun. And that's kind of what I hear you saying. Would you agree?
Yes, exactly. I love the club analogy. You actually want to, have the enjoyment and the thrill of actually using what you're learning.
So what can a beginner do to kind of enjoy going to the club and dancing? What can they do to put the book down for a day and enjoy the actual language as something to have fun with?
Even if you're not 100% fluent, even if you're 1% fluent at speaking English, just go for it. You don't have to be 100% fluent. You can make mistakes. You can just go for it. And if you're not confident enough to even have a conversation, try and listen to other people's conversations, try and guess what they're saying, or maybe, just turn subtitles off on what you're watching. Just go freestyle, you know what I'm saying?
It's nice. So if you're like not confident enough to actually talk to people yet, you could maybe just like find some content that you already enjoy and just try to watch it.
Maybe just even turn the subtitles off and just try and listen, It's like...
Okay, if you're gonna design a 30-day study plan, just loosely off the top of your head, for someone learning a new language, whether it's Korean or English, what is going to be in your 30-day study plan for them?
One thing I did when I was learning Korean for the first time, if I learned a new grammar rule, I would write a diary about it. So I would be like, for example, I learned XX grammar. I would use XX grammar in my diary.
What grammar? Give me an example.
One thing that I had a hard time trying to grasp a concept about was 뭐뭐 했잖아, 뭐뭐 했잖아요. I wasn't sure what the nuance was about that. I'd search it on Google, and then I would see the appropriate situation to use it in, and I would write my diary using that grammar.
So you're saying, okay, you should learn a new grammar form, new grammar point every day. You should learn new words every day because you're trying to improve. But in your study plan, you would have people write a journal with the new grammar that they're learning. For example, if you're learning English and you're learning the grammar form used to, like I used to play guitar or I used to do gymnastics, you would write a journal about your childhood when you used to do something, and you would try to use that grammar form as much as you could in a natural way. And these days you can run that all through ChatGPT and ask it, is my journal natural? Can you help me improve my journal? So these are some tools you can use. Is there anything else that people would do in this 30 days to help them improve in language?
And so one of the things that I really thought helped me, especially in listening, was active listening. So we would have a script, actually. This is for people whose listening or speaking skills are still in its beginning stages. You would learn and memorize the script for both speaker A and speaker B, and you would perform that with the teacher.
That's nice. So maybe someone listening to this video, they could find an easy dialogue with an A-B speaker, and they would learn both parts, both A and B part of the easy dialogue.
Yes, correct. Learn both the A and B part of the easy dialogue, and then try and recite it with another Korean learner or with a native speaker. Practice listening to the A part, and then practice speaking the A part, and then practice listening to the B part, and then practice speaking the B part.
The beauty of dialogues is that they teach you what to say in certain situations, right? So it's like a dialogue about people eating or ordering at a restaurant, right? Well, if there's like a waiter and the person ordering, well, that would be directly applicable for me when I'm in a restaurant and I'm ordering, right? So that is the beauty of dialogues.
Yes.
Hey man, it's kind of hot. Do you want to go to a cafe and get a cool drink?
Yes, I'm sweating like crazy right now.
Let's do it.
여러분 잠시만요. 영어가 정말로 필요할 때 자신 있게 쓸 수 있나요? 진짜 목적은 여행하고 외국인과 대화하고 영어로 먹고 사는 거 아닌가요? 근데 왜 아직도 우리는 비동사, 현재 완료 진행형 같은 실생활에선 쓰지도 않은 문법 이름만 배우고 있을까요? 이제는 진짜 상황에 대비해야죠. 제가 직접 만든 Real 영어 강의, 미국인 션의 살아있는 영어 패키지가 필요할 때입니다. 레스토랑이랑 카페에서 주문하기, 공항에서 유심을 살 때, 입국 심사를 통과할 때, 때문에 실제로 상황, 실제로 원어민과 대화할 때 어떤 표현을 써야 하는지 하나하나 알려드리고 제가 직접 그 상황들에서 어떻게 대처하는지도 영상으로 생생하게 보여드립니다. 그리고 수강하시면 이런 시리즈도 함께 드립니다. 지금 이 영상을 보시는 분들께만 드리는 특별 혜택,
할인 코드 Real English 입력 시 15% 할인.
왕초보도 환영입니다. 아래 링크를 눌러서 무료 수업 먼저 체험해보세요. 궁금한 점은 카카오톡으로 언제든지 물어보세요.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
So, Sean, why did you originally come to Korea?
It's a long story, but when I started fencing for the first time in the United States, my first coach was actually ex-Korean national team. And so he had only moved to America for about a year and a half. So what he liked to do with his students, including me, was to bring them to Korea once a year for training. What I realized when I was training here in Korea is that everyone gives their 100%. Everyone trains really hard. And that really elevates the average skill of every individual fencer here. And so I think I kind of realized that if I were to live here and I were to train, I would become really, really good. And I feel like my skills would become better. And so that's what kind of motivated me to start speaking Korean and start learning Korean in order to prepare myself to try and live here and try and fence here.
What's your biggest tip for sounding natural when you speak Korean?
Not pronunciation, surprisingly. Some people think that it's pronunciation that, makes a person sound natural, but I think it's more intonation. The tone, like the fall and rise of your voice, where you say it.
Stresses.
Yes, stresses as well.
Can you give me an example in Korean of the wrong stress and the right stress?
For example, you would come into class and your teacher would be like, "You didn't do your homework, did you? 너 숙제 안 했지?" But if you feel that it was an unfair accusation towards you because you actually did do homework, you would say, 나 했거든요? In that intonation, for going from a low to a high rising intonation to, describe your unfair situation or your unfair emotions.
Okay, so maybe the wrong intonation would be 저는 했거든요.
Correct. That would be the wrong intonation.
Right,
Yes.
even though the pronunciation is fine.
Yes.
It doesn't match the situation. So the equivalent in English might be if your teacher was like, you didn't do your homework, did you? You would respond with something like, actually, I did do my homework. You would have to stress the did, right? So this is all outside of the realm of pronunciation, but more like you're saying on intonation. In English, when you're speaking, stress is extremely important. But instead, if you said something like, actually, I did do my homework. Actually, I did do my homework. You stressed homework, it would sound very weird. Okay, so how does someone improve their intonation?
I think that's one of the reasons why people say dramas, watching these are helpful to them, is because they're following the exaggerated intonations, which moves over to everyday conversation.
So you're saying a good way to improve your intonation would be to watch dramas, like Netflix dramas or Hollywood movies.
Yes.
And notice the conversations that the two actors are having, and you can try shadowing them, repeating exactly what they're saying.
Of course, you have to do this consciously. You have to have a notebook and you have to write, what they're doing. You can't just shadow and hope that your brain will automatically sort the context, sort when you're going to need to do it. You would have to be conscious about your practice.
Makes sense. It would be really helpful if you had the script too, I think.
And then there's going to be those aha moments where you just something clicks and, oh yeah, I've heard that before in real life. And you're hearing it as well in the drama or the Netflix show that you're watching. And oh yeah. And then from that moment, you can say it's yours.
What was your favorite drama for doing this in Korean?
DP. It's a Korean drama that focuses on military police catching people who escape from their mandatory military service in Korea. The acting and the way that people talk and, the exaggerations and the intonations really helped me to step up another level, I think.
That's amazing. And I think that's a really good drama for you too, because it's a lot of young men.
Correct.
And you're a young man.
Yes, I am a young man.
And I think it's really important for you to shadow people that are in your similar demographic.
Yes.
So if you're like a 25-year-old woman, it's definitely better to shadow, if you're learning American English, a young American woman that's in her 20s, yes. Right? More than like a 45-year-old man or a 65-year-old man. That's not really as helpful. So for you, the drama you watch was probably way more helpful for you.
Bingo. That's a big one.
What's a common mistake a lot of Koreans make when speaking or studying English that they can probably fix easily?
Not putting in filler words.
Give me an example.
Instead of, stuttering at the beginning of a sentence, you can always put in like the word
Kinda, like, sorta, maybe.
Yes. And I think that's the way that, a lot of native speakers register you as a native speaker as well, which is everyone's end goal, to sound like a native speaker. And so that's one of the tools that I think that a lot of Koreans miss because they're always trying to speak perfect.
Yeah, right. So native speakers also use these filler words when thinking and speaking because maybe you don't have everything organized perfectly in your brain when you're speaking with someone, so you need a little bit of time to think and organize your thoughts. The Korean equivalent would be what?
있잖아. 약간 뭐라고 해야 될까?
Any final thoughts?
Breaks here and there are okay, but I'd say that instead of I didn't take any breaks personally. Even when I felt kind of gassed out from speaking, I just listen to a podcast continuously.
Right. So just all angles. You're listening to podcasts, you're listening to shows, you're listening to music, you're talking with friends, you're studying in books, you're going to school, you're talking to the cafe barista, right?
Yeah.
So studying a language in as many different ways and angles as you can to keep mixing it up, to keep it fresh. One day you do 2 hours of speaking, the next day you're a little bit tired, but in order to keep the consistency, you just listen to a podcast. You listen to something easy that you can kind of relax to and listen to. You're still getting the studying in, but you're kind of giving yourself a bit of a break. And the more you study and the more you improve in that language, the better your kind of listening material can be. For example, you can listen to more difficult material while taking a break.
Correct. It's always consistency. Consistency is key. And I think that goes for everything in life. When I was really I didn't want to have a conversation with anyone or I wasn't in a mood to talk, I would literally just go home, put on my headphones, listen to a podcast while playing a game or something.
A Korean podcast.
Yeah, a Korean podcast.
That's cool,
yes,
man.
Yeah. And then, if I felt kind of detached from the language or I wasn't really interacting enough, I'd actively look for someone to speak with, maybe on pen pal applications where you can call with someone who's trying to learn English and someone who's trying to learn English can call with you.
So when listening to podcasts, what percentage should I aim to understand?
At the least 30% to 40% of the podcast would be a normal percentage.
So you're more of the belief that not understanding the majority of it is okay. Because other people say 50 to 70% is a good range, but for you, you're comfortable just diving in at 30 to 40%.
Yeah, even if you can't understand it. That's what I did in the beginning as well.
And that worked for you?
Yeah, and it worked for me as well. And I just took what I could, and then, if I had more basis on listening and hearing after 2 weeks of training it, then I'd come back and then I'd understand more. And so,
what about a beginner?
Maybe a podcast might be a bit difficult, I would assume.
Yeah, but good
Yeah.
for intermediate. What about kids' cartoons?
Yes, kids' cartoons would be very, very good, especially for beginners, because the grammar, the tone, and the speed of the voice as well would be all accustomed or attuned to a child, yes.
Yeah, when I was learning Korean and I was beginner, I listened to Pororo.
뽀로로.
You know that?
뽀로로 알지.
It was actually really helpful,
Yeah.
and I learned words like 친구 and 알, which is
Yeah.
an egg,
Yeah.
because they were looking for eggs
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. And I learned the sentence 뽀로로 뭐 하는 거야?
뽀로로 뭐 하는 거야?
And I was like, wow, that's what people say. That's what native speakers say, right?
Yeah.
But it was geared for young Korean children who are actually also learning Korean.
Correct.
Just the same way I'm learning Korean. Maybe something in English could be like Peppa Pig.
Yes. Dora the Explorer, I would recommend 100% to you.
It's a
because
great one for learning
they're-
English.
They're always asking, hey, can you find the blank, blank, blank?
Right.
Do you know where the blank, blank, blank is?
Right.
And so there are a lot of Q&A, a lot of, can you do this? Can you find this? And they're repeating the word slowly several times so you can hear it.
All right, cool, man. Let's enjoy the rest of this lemonade and then maybe we can head out. What do you say?
Yes.
All right, bro. It was so fun
man.
talking with you today.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Nice seeing you.
See you next time.
See you next time, man.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. Did you enjoy it? If so, please let me know in the comments down below. Once again, I'm Sean, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.